Okay, right. Dimitri, the show is yours.
Okay, then I will start. Let me introduce myself first. So I'm Dmitry Krainy, and I'm currently a lead application architect in Spryker. And I wanted to start talking about the Symfony changes that we introduced last month. As most of you probably know, we previously used Symfony a lot in Spryker. We are still not Symfony application, but we are introducing wrappers around lots of components that Symfony provides. But some components that we had to introduce on our own, like mechanism, scheduler, Glue API that we had, dependency injection using factories. So all those things were implemented years ago, and we had to implement them because there was no good alternatives provided by ecosystems. And this year, we decided that it's time to start using some industry standards instead of our own components and focus more on commerce capabilities instead of platform things. And this was first trials that we did. It's actually first we started with Symfony Dependency Injection. We checked some other systems that are possible to integrate in Spryker, but as we still have a lot of components from Symfony, we stopped investing into other systems and get back to Symfony Dependency Injection. With this first thing, we were able to integrate another applications like API platform and all other components, but also we wanted to make more improvements into Symfony profiler and start using the Symfony Messenger that is a representation of queue mechanism. And with this integration, we were able to start using Symfony Scheduler. The main idea of all this integration is that we are not enforcing projects to start using it. They still have options to continue using Spryker native components or to switch to these systems. The difference, that something that's provided by Spryker, it's Spryker native, but those things that Symfony provides, you usually have better documentation, better configuration, and better extensibility. Plus, community provides a lot of supporting of components that is not needed for Spryker, but may be needed for some exact projects. And also, Symfony components has better spreading and more documentation, I would say, from perspectives that more people knows how to work with them, and it's easier to onboard for new developers. So I think we need to start with Symfony injection. Yeah, could you please take it over?
Thank you, Dima, for this introduction. You said almost everything that I wanted to say, so I can hand over to the next one. No, just kidding. So I'm Rene. I'm working quite a long time with Spryker. I went through everything that you have seen and even more. And my topics for today is a bit of introduction into Symfony Dependency Injection first, and then the API platform. Symfony Dependency Injection is mainly away from going the traditional way that Spryker had since years, from manual wiring to smart auto wiring. That will reduce the boilerplate code that you will need to develop things on the project, will make dependency injection way easier than it was before. You have true decoupling with that, some more dev tools that you can use. It is compiling a container before your application starts, and that has also a performance improvement. And yeah, as Dima already said, the documentation about that is pretty well known. Whoever worked with dependency injection from Symfony will probably be very fast onboarded, and it adds a bit better testability on the project level. So for show a couple things to you. So what we have done is we enabled the dependency injection component from Symfony into Spryker, and that in a backward compatible way. So you can take it, but you can also live with the old way. Let me just show a bit what the old way is to get it back to your head. Just say that you want to have your index action with a table. You would need to go to the factory and you need to create a customer table with all its dependencies. Yeah? This is handwritten. All those code is handwritten. The injections are handwritten. That is quite a bit of work. It's not that much, specifically when you think about AI that could help you, but that will sum up quite tremendously when you have everything in the dependency injection container and you can get your dependency and injected as you wish. So that is basically pretty easy. When you want a dependency, you would then have a constructor, just as an example, constructor, where you would say, okay, I want the customer table and I want the customer facade, for example. And then you would get those automatically available in your class where you have the dependencies defined. The dependency injection container is configured for each application individually. So for Z, Glue, wherever you want to have that. And the configuration is pretty easy, let's say. You will get one out of the box that will scan basically the whole source directory with your code and makes all services or all classes, simply calls it services, that you have defined available. So from that moment on where you injected or where you configured the dependency injection component, then you can get constructor injection with all the benefits that this dependency injection container brings. There is, as I said, this is Symfony Dependency Injection compiles a container before your application starts. And this is a cached file. So you don't need to think about performance impact at runtime of your application. And it will also help you figuring out when things go wrong with your configuration. Apparently, I can't really showcase something I destroyed my system a couple minutes ago. But that dependency injection container, that also allowed us to bring in bundles from Symfony, because those are heavily relying on the existence of the Symfony dependency injection container. And the first thing we started with is the framework bundle. And what I will also talk about is the API platform bundle. I will paste links here in the chat to our public documentation about all those topics, so you will not lose this information. The framework bundle is one that is heavily used by Spryker already in the kernel. We use that with a lot of backward compatibility things to let projects in the scenario where they don't need to migrate to those things, because that can also bring a bit of work. Those bundles are configured also in each application. Each application can be configured differently. And these bundles bring a lot of features or connect things like from the framework bundle, make the connection of things way more easier. And there's also configuration for each of those bundles. But now let's probably move on to the API platform, which was only able to be used by going through the dependency injection container implementation and enabling the framework bundle. And in the past, we had like Glue controller, like a resource controller, which defines a couple things that are usable for the API. Glue application dependency provider. The Glue dependency application dependency provider had a list of all resource routes that were enabled, and also like the relationships that you are able to configure. And there is also a console command to generate a Swagger documentation that you can also as I said, my system is currently not perfectly working, but that should be familiar to you. The Glue layer that we still have and still supporting is quite complex to be built and takes quite a lot of time to add new endpoints to your system. And the Glue API is bound to the REST API format. With API platform, you will get the de facto standard for APIs that's used by Symfony and Laravel applications. We have a declarative resource definition. It brings in a lot of industry standards also for media types that you can use, like JSON LD, Hydra, Open API, REST API. You can even use CSV, XML much easier with that. We have integrated automated validation and security. It is, as it is also community driven, it is relatively future proof and in constant development. And what it looks like from the UI perspective, that is one built with the API platform, just a handful of resources here visible. These are all the endpoints that I currently have. And those are now configured via resource YAML files. These are basically just YAML definitions of what this API should look like. You can define all the operations this endpoint should have, all the properties, how it handles includes, that everything in YAML files. Same for validations. That was only partially available in the system, but with the API platform migration, we also use Symfony validation component that is then responsible to validate the incoming data and outgoing data to be in specific formats whatsoever. Everything is now Symfony. This is really, you can go to their documentation, check out what constraints they have, how to use them. Everything is documented there. The resource definition is one thing that we had to add on top of the default PHP declaration of resources, but that's due to the nature of the Spryker framework and its modularity. So a resource can be built out of several modules. Imagine the product. It has the product itself, product images, product labels, whatsoever, you name it. There can be a lot of things that spread across several modules. And with this YAML definition, we are able to generate the required resources that the API platform needs. And I could just go into one. This is a generated class that is directly used by the API platform. This is also configured again for each application where you want to have API platform, you will configure that. And there is a path that it is also everything out of the box and documented on our end. Again, I will paste the documentations for that when I'm done with my talk. And these resources end up then in these generated classes, which are exactly as it would be if you would go through the documentation of the API platform, how to build resources. You can also manually build your resources in the exact same way as it is done here. But as you can see, with all these validation constraints, getters, setters in place, that could be kind of a tedious work to do. And these resource YAML files are very easy to read and understand. There is not much magic for that. There is also a console command to generate those resources. And let's check one example here, customers. Here we have all these attributes for that resource defined. And if I go and add, for example, another email, just let's call it like that. And when I clear the cache and reload the page, that can take a couple of seconds. Then the Swagger UI and the API definition is automatically updated with your new property that you want to have. It's sometimes so. Now it will be there. And yeah, these resource definitions are merged on with the console command. I showed you everything is documented. And then you will get automatically the new field. It's just a random example here, rendered into your UI, and you can use it. Another benefit from API platform is that out of the box, it provides lots of usable media types for your endpoints. Previously, it was really bound to only have the REST API format. And with the API platform, you can choose CSV whatsoever. You can configure what you want to use in your API in the respective API platform configuration. But that opens also the door to switch formats for you if you need that. For example, if you have an external system that wants to send you CSV data, then you from now on can accept CSV data for your endpoints, for example. We are currently on the way to migrate everything, all endpoints that we currently have in Glue to the API platform. We are doing our best to get this thing feature complete for you. That's basically about these topics. Do we want to do Q&A right away or at the end? I think time is...
I think I want to add some things here additionally. So the most important is that API platform is currently working in parallel with Glue API. So it's not mandatory, even if you start using API platform, to migrate all endpoints before it will be available for you. We implemented it in a way that if you have some endpoint in Glue API, it will still be usable. If you migrated some endpoints from Glue API to REST to API platform, you can disable it. Glue API endpoint one by one, and only those endpoints that will not represented in Glue API, they will be handled by API platform. So the idea is that there is no mandatory migration path, but if you want to start doing it, you can do endpoint by endpoint. No need to do full replacement in one release or whatever.
Or you can use in parallel as well. So you could even create your new endpoints right away with the help of the API platform.
And maybe one short question from my side in between. Does it mean basically Glue is deprecated and won't?
No.
Okay.
No. There is no chance and no way, no thinking in that direction that we will deprecate Glue. That is not the goal. At some point, we will be feature complete with API platform for those who want to use them, but the rest it will stay as is. We will support bug fixes.
Important message here that Glue itself remains. We just replace an underlying infrastructure behind the Glue, so everything will work as before, only with API platform.
So as you said, Edward, so we're going to have the same endpoints for Glue backend and Glue storefront. The only thing that changes is that if we use the API platform from now on, I mean, it's the same, but we have more features with the API platform, right?
I wouldn't say more features, but definitely way more possibilities, faster implementation of new endpoints. These kind of things.
Okay, right.
Out of the box documentation, as I showed, that will automatically update. Validation is handled by Symfony. Security is handled by Symfony. We are using more and more native Symfony components in those bundles, let's say like that, rather than reinventing our own things too much on top.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, and also one important note that API platform is currently dependent on Symfony Dependency Injection because it's just a Symfony application and you cannot Symfony bundle and you cannot use it just regular Spryker module.
Okay, there is a question from Volodymyr. Go ahead.
Yeah, so guys. So I'm actually using already API platform in our project and it works well. So in parallel with Glue and so on, I'm using the last version 0.6. It works perfectly, thanks for that. I have a question about application services class. So actually I saw on your example, it looks much better than mine because I don't know, I have some class from workshop most probably, which was added to the project, but it was not done by me. So the question is, now I have to register every service that I want to use manually, like add this client, for example, from another model and make it public, and then I can use inside my API platform implementation. But in your case, you didn't do this manually, right? So I saw while you're sharing that somehow you have done this automatically, right? Like
It is more or less automatically, yes. So In my application services, I use the module finder to go over all modules that we have. And in this case, specifically over the project modules. And then I put them, the key part here is basically that you add them with a namespace to the services and load them. By that, you will get all your project services into the container. What we provide from a core perspective is that there is a Spryker defaults path that is running all the time when the container gets compiled, and it will add all facade interfaces, all configurations, all clients, and all service interfaces to the container. So when your service is in the container and it has a constructor dependency to one of the Spryker default services, then you will get it.
Okay. Spryker default path, it was added somewhere in Spryker application model, or?
That's in, let me check. I think it's in the container itself, yeah.
It's container.
Yeah.
But I don't have this, most probably for my project, right? So I have to get this from... Is it on project level, as I see?
No, this one is on my core level. Let's do it like this, since we also have other topics to present. Hidran, can you somehow connect us, or Edward, I don't know, someone takes care of getting you happy?
Okay. Yeah, we can collect your questions. You can post it also on the community. Some questions related to the API platform. And then if we don't answer all of the questions today, then we can answer those questions in the community.
Okay.
So, for example, one of my questions was, that because I was giving it a try for a future workshop, is that custom namespaces registration. Is there a way, René, to register the custom namespace so that it is automatically added to the container?
Yeah, it is, as I showed in the application services.
Okay.
There you will add your own namespace and the load with the path to what should be outlined. I will, while the others will present, I try to find if I've documented that publicly in our docs. If not, that is definitely findable on the Symfony docs, how to add your own services.
Yeah.
The only difference is that we do it in the application services. This is a bit different. Symfony uses more YAML files, but since we have multiple applications in one repository like EVSAC, Glue, whatsoever, we have those configurations separated, and we are using PHP. Because that's
I just used the service load. I passed my new namespace, and then the folder where the namespace was, and it worked. But I don't know if there's a Spryker way to add that namespace.
There is no Spryker way. So we try to be as close as possible to the default installation of the Symfony components, or what will come next in community-driven packages whatsoever. We only had to add really little things to bring those things into the Spryker applications and have it manageable by us, and give our customers a way to easily configure it without any extras. Only the point where the configuration lives is changed by us to have it per application available.
Okay, great, thank you. You want to go on with the next topic?
Yep.
Okay.
So
great.
next topic is Symfony Messenger. So how it integrated. So first of all, it's this configuration. This integration is the old way Spryker standard, when we are not using it as a Symfony bundle directly, but we're using adapters around Symfony components. Why we did so? Because for existing projects, it would be hard to integrate Symfony bundles, because in any case, they will have to integrate Symfony DI and lots of other components. But for this module and Symfony Scheduler by itself, we wanted to make it more attractive for existing project, because for this exactly functionalities, they can just use it without any additional features that needs to be installed. So configuration is quite simple. You just install this module. You configure the same queues as we have in RabbitMQ module previously. You need to install additional adapter on project level that will replace RabbitMQ adapter with Symfony Messenger adapter. And then you can start using Symfony Messenger, but under the hood, you can already use only AMPQ transport, so it's RabbitMQ, but we already checked some options when we use SQS and even database on doctrine base. So for this, you can replace this DNS with proper transport and provide the configuration that is needed. I believe that soon we will prepare documentation how it can be done with SQS and database maybe. Yes. In general, this is it. So everything we try to make as much as backward compatible as possible. That's why you don't need to migrate lots of code. You just need to change duplicate, I would say, configuration, and then you can drop a RabbitMQ module completely. Next thing, it's Symfony Scheduler. Here we also try to make it as backward compatible as possible because for now we are using Jenkins for management of scheduler jobs, but with Symfony Scheduler, we moved everything to application layer instead of manipulating it with Jenkins. So no queues manipulation with Jenkins anymore. You need to have 2 jobs actually in Jenkins. Now it's queue consuming for publish synchronized queues and consume all other jobs that is required for Symfony Scheduler transport. By default, we are using the same approach as we had with Jenkins configuration. So you have list of jobs on project level, but not in separate file, but in this Symfony Scheduler configuration. Everything will be consumed by our wrappers that we created. But also, instead of just using this approach, you can create special plugins that can provide separate schedule. You can use not only this type of configuration, but you can use Symfony, almost Symfony native with different consumers, different scheduler. You can create, for example, instead of schedule from file, you can create schedule from database, from Redis, whatever source of schedule you want. You can do whatever you want, what is possible with Symfony almost. The only thing that for now, it's still a combination of Symfony infrastructure and Spryker infrastructure together. According to our plans, we will continue working on it. We will think how to make it better, how to get rid of Jenkins completely, because still Jenkins is currently used, but instead of this lots of jobs that we have here, we will have only 2. The only thing that is important that we currently supporting only DMS mode on. This is our default setup, and we don't want to support out of the box more than 1 setup. Questions?
There was some question from Giovanni in chat. So message, he said that Messenger they already using in production and it works. This is good. What were only okay? So question is why only DMS mode on? Because
this is our current design for all features, and we are trying to support only this main approach.
Does it answer your question, Giovanni?
I cannot say that it's not supporting out of the box DMS mode off, but we never tested it. For scheduler, it's not a problem. The main problem is Symfony Messenger, because it current out of the box doesn't support multiple connection for RabbitMQ, at least in configuration that we implemented. And DMS mode off requires a connection per store.
All right. Any other questions? All right, guys. Any other thing that you wanted to add to let people know?
Maybe one comment, please, guys, check chat inside this call. Rene posted some links to documentation with the explanation how these things can be configured, related to API platform and dependency injection. Maybe this will be helpful.
All right. So I'm going to share in the post all the links so that you have the links to the documentation. And let's meet after our new release. I think after April, I'll let you know the new date. And I hope that we have new cool things for you to show. Thank you, guys.
Ciao.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye-bye.